You know the expression rock and a hard place? Well, times past, folk might well have said, especially if they were travelling through the Straits of Messina between Italy and Sicily, they might well have said between Scylla and Charybdis. Then that's what we're talking about today. So I'm going to turn comments off as much as I love you, and I'm going to show you this image first. Between Scylla and Charybdis. Oh look, and my head is my head is kind of marvelously maybe where Scylla's head might be. Could you? Yeah, well, you can see it in this image. Hang on a minute. Let me just see if I can show you. No, her head doesn't really appear actually. Anyway, so Scylla and Charybdis. Okay, so well, Scylla is actually this horrific rock that you can see right in the center of this image, with all these sort of dog heads, and we're going to come back to her. Charybdis is down in the bottom right hand side of this image, and you wouldn't want to meet her either. So her, and then it is a her. I always thought Charybdis was should be a man. I just thought it was a man's name. And looking at this image, which is a fresco, it's a 16th century fresco. I think the date that is given is 1575, so 1570s. It's in a palazzo in Florence, the Palazzo Salviati. And it was painted by an Italian painter, Alessandro Allori, no G, I've added a G, Alessandro Allori. So Charybdis, not a man, looks like an old man here to me, but a woman. And yes, and sailors had to navigate their way between these two horrific monsters, essentially. So this fresco actually depicts the travels of Ulysses or Odysseus. So Odysseus in Greek mythology, and the Romans called him Ulysses, who, basically spent a really, really long time getting home. I mean, you talk about the journey from hell. He actually had the journey from hell. We might do something about Odysseus at a later date. So, as you can see, he is trying to navigate between these two horrific monsters. Hasn't gone too well, I've got to say, because he has lost several of his soldiers. But the best thing about it, it's not the best thing, but one of the things that really makes me laugh about this fresco is just have a look at the soldiers in the boat that are left. I'm just going to bring up a close-up. Look, they're just like, oh, look. Some of our friends and colleagues have just been eaten by horrific dogs. Oh, never mind. Oh well, we'll probably be all right. Let's hope they don't eat quickly. Yeah, I find it very strange. And I'm not entirely sure either what they're supposed to have on their heads. Quite strange headgear in my opinion, but there we go. Allori clearly had an image in his mind, and that was what he was depicting. But to go back to the whole fresco, so who are these monsters? And, were they always monsters? The answer to that is inevitably, as with Greek mythology, no, they weren't always monsters. Maybe not inevitably, but fairly frequently not always monsters. In fact, both of them started off life actually pretty happy, pretty, in Charybdis's case, pretty high born. So Charybdis, the old man who looks like he's sort of blowing wind, but actually he's not. I will tell you what's happening in a second. He is, I'm calling him he, she is the daughter of Poseidon, the sea god, and Gaia, the Earth Mother. So, you know, she's like way, way back, right at the beginning of time, pretty much. Now, Poseidon and Zeus had a little bit of a fractious relationship. They were, in fact, brothers. So she is the niece of Zeus, and they were basically indulging in those early days in a bit of a race for territory. And so what Poseidon did was he said to his daughter Charybdis, okay, right, what I want you to do is I want you to basically help me grab as much land as you possibly can, because Poseidon was the sea god. What that meant was just flood huge swathes of land with seawater. Got it? And she's like, yes, Daddy, of course I will. So that's exactly what she did. So, you know, she spends her early years flooding the land, really, really pissing off Zeus, until he's like, right, you might be my niece, but frankly, I've had enough of this. And he punishes her. And, you know, Zeus is nothing if not inventive with his punishments. And the punishment quite often, sometimes, I'm going to say quite often, it sometimes matches the so-called crime. It does in this case, because what Zeus punished Charybdis with was that he destined her to spend an eternity always then swallowing seawater. So what happens? So she's always swallowing this water, so that's creating a whirlpool. Okay, so that is where the whirlpool on the Straits of Messina apparently comes from, and they are really, really dangerous, like really dangerous. And there is, you know, there are rocks, and there is very dangerous stretches of water. There are very dangerous stretches of water. Just a thought, I'm going to put it out there. Do you think that possibly, actually, all these legends grew from the geography of the area? Ooh, controversial or not? So anyway, so Charybdis is this whirlpool. Scylla. Okay, so Scylla has a completely different, fairly different start in life. She's not quite so grand. She is a lovely sea nymph. Very, very attractive, great, just living her life, carrying on, until one day she meets, bring up something else, until one day she meets this guy. Bit of a hunk, I think you'll agree. Unfortunately, Scylla doesn't see him in that way. He, however, absolutely falls head over heels in love with Scylla. He is absolutely crazy about her. She's like, yeah, thanks, not so much, just kind of carries on her business. And so he hatches this plan that he's not going to do anything horrible, but what he thinks is that he thinks, okay, I'm going to go and see Circe, who is a witch, and I'm going to ask Circe if she will give me a love potion that I can give to Scylla, and then hopefully, she will begin to feel the same way about me. What do you mean, begin to feel the same way about me? If you drink a love potion, bam, you're completely besotted, aren't you? So that's what he's hoping. Yeah, doesn't quite work out. Why doesn't it quite work out? Well, he is so irresistible to most people except for Scylla that Circe actually falls in love with him. And so she is completely in love with this guy who's called Glaucus, by the way. And so Circe thinks, I'm not going to give him a love potion to give to Scylla. No way, because if she doesn't get that love potion, she won't fall in love with him, and I am in with a big chance here. So what does she do? Instead of giving him a love potion, she actually gives him something that will turn Scylla into a monster. So this is Scylla. This is Rubens. No, okay, well, the image is of Scylla by Rubens, and it just looks like, there's a lovely young girl in this image, who actually is Rubens' wife. So this is almost, well, I don't even need to say almost certainly. I'm certain that this is the model for this is Helen Formant. So this was painted in 1636, and Rubens married his second wife, Ellen Formant, in 1630. So anything that he does, any painting that he does from 1630 to 1640 when he died, that includes a nude, and he did quite a lot because she was, it seems, very happy to pose for him. That is going to be his wife, and she was 37 years his junior. He absolutely adored her. He revelled in her, and it was by all accounts a pretty happy marriage until, unfortunately, till he died. So Helen Formant taking the part of Scylla, who frankly just looks as though she is walking along the beach with her dogs, wearing sadly only a tiny wisp of clothing that isn't going to protect her from very much. I hope she's got some factor 50 on as well, because she looks fairly fair-skinned there. But and you know, unruly dogs, and that's the end of that story. But only it isn't, of course, because this is in fact Scylla being transformed by this potion into a monster who was then destined to be, as we can see, destined to be tied to a rock, or enclosed in a rock. And have 6 dog heads, each with they were described by Ovid as having really long necks and 3 rows of razor sharp teeth, so that they could really rip their victims apart, and ravenously hungry, always ravenously hungry. So this is how she ends up, but this is how she has started life. You can tell, I think, though, here what exactly Rubens, what really his aim was. Kind of, you can see what he was trying to put front and not center, but nearly center of this image. See what his concerns were. On the other hand. Guess who painted this? Very easy to guess if you know just a little bit about art. So this is the fabulous Turner. So this is 1846, I think, or 1841. Look at that sun. Oh my God. Look, it's just fantastic. Turner, obviously, probably the most famous painter of light and sunlight and light effects and sunrise, sunset, just absolutely glorious. So you can see almost in this sort of center left there, you can see Glaucus there, who has once again he's gone to give Scylla this love potion, and she drinks it. Either she drinks it, or sometimes in the story Circe actually just poisons the water around where Scylla bathes. So that's, there are variations, and she is sort of running off with a couple of cherubs. Why not? And about to be transformed into this monster. So it's interesting that in both of these images, Circe, who is the perpetrator really of this crime, because poor Glaucus doesn't know what he's doing when he gives, for argument's sake, gives Scylla this potion. So Circe isn't actually in these images, although kind of, especially in this image by Turner, kind of she is. And I say that because sunlight, really, really important. In fact, the sunlight kind of permeates this whole image. And this image, it's in Fort Worth in Texas, in the US. What's it called? Kimber. Anyway, art museum in Fort Worth in Texas. It's quite famous. I really should know it. But it is meant to be, I'm going like this, because it is actually meant to be framed in a circular frame, which kind of again really enhances even though it's a square painting, even really enhances the idea that it is kind of a sun. So why is the sun so important, apart from the fact that Turner loves to paint it? Well, guess who Circe's father was? Helios, so the sun god. So in a way, it's really, really clever. You see it a little bit in the Rubens. I'll go back to the Rubens in a second. So you see it a little bit in the Rubens, but Turner has really infused this. Everything about this painting is about the sun, and of course the whole story in so many respects is about Circe. Fantastic book, by the way. Madeline Miller, Circe. I'll put it in the notes afterwards. Absolutely brilliant. She also wrote the Song of Achilles, also absolutely brilliant. Madeline Miller. And apparently, apparently she's Kirky rather than Circe. Anyway, don't know. So yes, so jealous Circe gave Glaucus, who was completely in love with Scylla, a non-love potion, turned her into this monster, and there we go, just one more look at that, and yeah, and she was destined to be chained to a rock as a dog with kind of 6 heads and eat sailors. So they had the choice of that or being swallowed down by a whirlpool, which is Charybdis. Interesting. I just want to show you one last thing, and this just kind of demonstrates the influence of a poet called Ovid. So Ovid was a Roman poet, and he was born in 42, 43 BC, and so wrote kind of up until, how would you say it? Yeah, so working the years down towards AD. And so this is a pot pre-Ovid. This is about 450 BC. Actually, it's a crater, so it's a vessel that would be used for mixing water and wine. And this is Scylla on this crater. So you've got the dogs. So they don't look like they're terribly, going to do too much harm. They kind of look. They look quite happy, really, don't they? Like, oh, hello. But then she's got a serpent tail, the sort of snaky sort of type tail. She's holding a fish knife. So really quite a different description or different depiction, rather. You don't tend to see depictions like that after Ovid, because Ovid gave such a full and convincing and rich description of Scylla with the 6 dogs, and that's where we get the three rows of razor sharp teeth and the long necks, and he said that Scylla howled and barked like a dog, and so therefore, generally speaking, thereafter you would get artists would depict Scylla in the way that Ovid described her in his fabulous poem Metamorphoses. Well worth a read, absolutely brilliant. So there you go, between a rock and a hard place, between Scylla and Charybdis. But you know what? If I was going to choose any of those, I wouldn't go for the Rubens, I wouldn't go for the crater, I wouldn't go for the fresco, which can't be moved anyway, that's very firmly in Florence. I would go for this fabulous Turner, first exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1841. Yeah, you know what Turner used to do? He used to finish his... They were allowed, artists were allowed to go into the Royal Academy just before the exhibition, the last day, the sort of the vernissage, and which literally means the varnishing, and they could finishing touches to their images. Kind of any time during this day once they were hung, and he would always steal the show. You know, he would look around him and he would think, right, okay, how can I make my image stand out even more against this one or this one? Yeah, he was an absolute master of that. So yeah, he loved to be the centre of attention. Someone also told me the other day, and I'm kind of going off piece a little bit here now, but someone also told me that he used to have various paintings on the go at once. And this is probably completely true. I've never read it, so I don't know. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be true. And he would have all these different canvases, and then he'd mix up a certain colour, yellow for example. Absolutely loved yellow. He was accused once of stealing all the yellow, so there wasn't any for anybody else. And he would just, you know, oh, okay, right, I need yellow there on that painting, and I need yellow there on that painting, and I need yellow there on that painting, and just kind of work several all at once, which is quite economical. So I don't, you know, maybe he did that once or twice, maybe, I don't know. But there we go. So Scylla and Charybdis and Glaucus and Circe. I'm going to turn off images and I'm going to turn comments back on. Come on, commenting. Yeah, there we go. Happy Thursday, everybody. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.